What is the significance of the Holy Eucharist? Why would Christ give us his body and blood? But first, we start with our mission.
With firm faith, I believe and profess everything that the Catholic Church teaches. But for many reasons, the fullness of that message hasn't been getting out lately. What if we, together, set out to learn the faith, to live the faith, and to share this faith, like missionaries of old? What would the world look like in 100 years?
So what is the purpose of the sacrament of the Holy Eucharist? Why would Christ give himself to us in this way? Isn't his sacrifice on the cross enough? Welcome, I'm Brad Shapezi. Tomorrow is Holy Thursday, which is a time that we Catholics reflect on the sacrifice of Christ, which substantially began on Holy Thursday in the upper room, when he took bread, saying the words, "This is my body." Now, the traditional Catholic belief of these words and the liturgy that Christ initiated when he spoke them has been very confusing to non-Catholics. So how should we understand this event? Now, to start out with, I want to build on some of the things that we've previously talked about and use that as a foundation. So it might be helpful to check out yesterday's video, which I'll link at the end. We've been speaking a lot about God's command to us to be fruitful and to multiply. For example, we discussed Noah's response to God's covenant was to plant a garden, a vineyard. It was the first thing he did immediately after God established the covenant with him. Now, much later, when the Israelites finally came into the Promised Land, we see them likewise establish an agricultural society that revolved around the three harvesting seasons. These three harvests were understood as a response to God's covenantal call to be fruitful and to multiply. So 3 times a year, the fruit from each of these harvests was brought to the temple and presented to God. These 3 pilgrim feasts are those feasts that we read about frequently throughout the scriptures. The Feast of Unleavened Bread, which corresponded to the grain harvest, the Feast of Weeks, or Pentecost, which corresponded to the wheat harvest, the Feast of Tabernacles, which corresponded to the grape harvest. So hopefully this illustrates how God's call to us to be fruitful and to multiply, to get married, have children, and grow food for our children. It does not just relate to our nourishment and propagation. It has also been seen as a liturgical act throughout biblical history. So that what it is that we need, now this is key, this is really important for understanding the sacraments, that which we truly need to have life and to have it abundantly, in this case, food for nourishment, is precisely what God has always provided to us. That is the whole point of Adam's garden, of Noah's vineyard, the Israelites' promised land, that God, through his goodness and providence, gives us everything that we need. There's a concept in philosophy that for every need that exists in nature, there actually exists something to fulfill that need. For example, we get hungry and there is food. We get thirsty and there is water. Wouldn't it be strange if we were thirsty but water didn't exist? Well, that's not the case with the world that God created. What we need actually is here. Now, this is key to the evil one's ploy in the garden. He tempted Eve to desire something else. He convinced her that there existed something else than the ordinary fruit of the garden that God provided for her to have abundant life. Incidentally, what was that tempting fruit? It was not abundant life from the tree of life that was there in the garden. It was the knowledge of not just good, but also evil, arguably something that man never needed. But I'm getting sidetracked because for Adam and Eve before the fall, it was sufficient to simply be fruitful and multiply. That simple liturgical act was enough to approach the throne of Almighty God. But after the fall, there was no fruit harvest that could be sufficient to bridge the metaphysical gap that was formed between natural man and a supernatural God. Grains, wheat, and grapes could not bridge that gap. Animal sacrifices could not bridge that gap. Mankind could not grasp at his own salvation. But God promised through his prophets that he would save us. In the fullness of time, the angel came to Mary and asked her to be fruitful and to multiply. And because she said the words, "Behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord. Let it be done unto me according to your word," because she gave herself to him, he, the blessed fruit of her womb, gave himself to us. At last, he gives to us everything that we need to survive, to be sustained, to have life, and to have it abundantly. What was it that we ever needed? Was it wheat or grapes? Was it animal sacrifices? No, none of these would ever suffice. What we needed all along, from the garden, through the flood, through the desert, to today, was him. Body, blood, soul, and divinity, the perfect fruit, the perfect offering, the perfect liturgy, the complete fulfillment of God's call to be fruitful and to multiply. And all we have to do is open our hearts and receive. And we have our Blessed Mother to thank for saying yes to that angel. Tomorrow, how can we know that Christ is truly present in the Holy Eucharist? Your homework is to reflect on Exodus chapter 7, verse 20. Click here to watch yesterday's video, and remember, you can't give what you don't have. So we're here to help you to learn the faith, to live the faith, and to love the faith so that you can get out there and share the faith with a hurting world that needs it now more than ever. Our blessed Lord told Saint Faustina that his mercy is a sign for the end time.